Okay, so we begin. Research in business and business of research. This is the module 3 of your CIRS. And we'll start with learning what internet research specialist is supposed to do, or what is the definition. Just tell me in case if you are disconnected or if you feel that you're not getting the voice is not coming, or if there's a video problem, just let me know right away. Okay. So internet research is a practice of finding and using internet information, especially free information of the World Wide Web. So mostly with the expectation of how the internet research specialist is supposed to gather information and then to see if it is able to access it without spending any money, basically just getting to understand what is happening around with the information that is freely available. That's the expertise initially, or you could say that that's where we want to get to with the queries we have learned. And then the next stage is to organize that information and then interpret that information. And so it basically is going to ask of you to have the ability to gather most relevant and reliable information and to organize it and be able to interpret it so that it can result in information set that is meaningful and it is easily understood by your clients. So a skilled internet researcher continually finds and organizes internet accessed information resources. One of the things with internet is that you lose track of what you collected, or sometimes you don't give it a cross reference, or there is a reliability issue which needs to be verified or at least disclosed to your client. So you need to keep a track and an itinerary as well as bookmarks and basically maintain a library of sorts, just so that you know where you went and you have kind of a trail to go back to. That requires a lot of organization of that information. And you have to be mindful that information on the internet changes frequently. So for you to get that reliability factor, you may want to revisit the sites if you feel that your sources that you've collected are dynamic and the nature of information is such that it does change with time. So you may want to revisit. That's just from the definition side and general idea of what an internet researcher is supposed to be doing. Provided that's the profession that we are talking about, not as if you're using it in a business environment, strictly as a definition for anyone whose core job as an independent consultant is to produce results from internet research. Now, some of the major questions when you are to start a business as an independent consultant. So independent consultant is a broad term. One of the things a consultant might be good at or may have acquired the skills specifically for finding information. You may be coming from knowledge management background or librarian background, or you're doing some comparative analysis, business research, whatever it may be. The idea is that you are offering it as a service rather than applying it for your own internal use as an employee somewhere. So whatever we are to discuss, or the way these slides are going to work, is for you to look at it from the perspective of someone who is starting their own independent consulting as an internet research specialist. That's where everything is focused. So making of an internet research specialist. Question you would ask, am I ready to offer online research services or research work? Questions that are listed here, as you could see that these are itemized, and basically it's circling a gentleman sitting in the middle. So all of these are small points or captions that we will use to elaborate on what it means. So to begin with, for your preparedness as an independent researcher, you will have to ascertain if you want to go after a general research market or generalized research, not specific to a domain of a profession. Like if you're an attorney, you may acquire skills to find information in the area of legal services, or legal research can be your forte, or it could be medical research, clinical trials, academic research, or whatever may come. That zone or that specific area of specialization is what separates you from being a generalist or doing general research versus being specific to an area of research within a domain of as I mentioned, legal or otherwise. Now, as a generalist, we will elaborate on that. Some of our students that are getting this course primarily to start their own research business, they want to start as a generalist. And what generalist means is typically any research which is which is required by all businesses, or it has a broader base of finding typical information by extracting it through the internet, using either their own talent for making those search queries, or for them to use any kind of specialized software that is primarily whose function is to scrape the data from the internet. So there are two ways to it. A generalist is looking for the type of information like sales leads, something to do with collecting information from preparing some certain surveys, or it could be collecting what is that called sales lead. There is sales lead, and there are several others. Let me look at the generalist to get an idea of what exactly is trying to explain, because I do want to differentiate between what is a generalist versus someone who is doing a professional subject related research. So let's look at the generalist. There is a chart here. Now, as a generalist, the type of information that is required is there could be data collection and verification of any kind, depending on what is expected from your client to collect in the first place. Contact list collection, product pricing, price comparison, feature set analytics or analysis of products that are for comparison reasons, or for reviews, or for checking some feature sets. Business intelligence collected, resume search for HR, working as a virtual assistant. Content writer may require some information. And so all of this is actually Dominic just joined us. So this chart basically tells about the typical type of generalist related research work. So let me just retract back to the same slide. Okay. Hi, Dominique. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. We've started already. We are looking at some of the things, or some of the itemized, and you could see that we have itemized some of the attributes or some of the essentials before starting your own independent research business. First, we started with the subject or the type of research that you may want to get into. It could work for you as someone who has a knowledge in certain industry, so you can be very specific about a topic, or your background may allow you to offer services in certain type of professions, like in legal or any other. And you could even select options like offering services as a generalist, someone who would do research on specific issues, look for sales leads, products and services, and so on. So there are so you have to really position yourself or position your business and steer it in such a way that it creates a service package which is focused on specific type of research that you are willing to offer. Then you've got where to search for information on the internet. So you need to have a reference or a directory or some software that organizes your links or your sources, so that at the time when you do get your research work, you're able to get to it and not look for resources randomly. And basically what you're doing is collecting the locations on the internet for finding those specific databases or online resources. Then you've got how to search for relevance. So relevancy and reliability, you need to know how to verify information, how to be able to basically to be able to convince your clients that you have performed that reliability tests. If it is something that you need to discuss, you need me to discuss more, we can get to it later. But for now, let's just assume that there is a list or itemized bullet points that tells you how to verify a resource on the internet, just so that the reliability can be established. How to identify fake and biased information. This is another area which is more to do with your ability to have that critical thinking. You have to visualize certain aspects of how the information is presented, so that you can actually work your way into finding whether or not it's fake, or if it's real, or if it's circulating in social media as a real news, or it is inducted with a malified intent, or it is supposed to be influencing certain issues on biased basis. So in order for you to get to it, or to get to understand what could be some of the methods of identifying fake information, you may want to consider learning a little bit more on subjects of OSINT, which is open source intelligent software, or you could read a little bit more through online forensic tools. For instance, we have a whole list of these that's actually been presented in a very organized way as a reference, which is for the tools you could use and some of the verification softwares. It's in your Dropbox. I don't know if you had the opportunity to look it up, but that is going to be extremely useful, and I might be able to get to it just so that I can show you where it's at. Let me break out of this, okay, and show you in your Dropbox. 1188. It's showing where is it? Research info. Yeah, this one. Research information reference. And let me just capture the password. So this is bootcamp. Just want to open it quickly and show you what it has, so that you know where if you need to verify the sources and investigate a little bit more to find out if they're fake or otherwise not reliable, you may be able to use certain tools. So in this book, which says Internet Information Source for Online Research, you can go to section that introduces you to those specialized tools. See here, it says specialized search engines, directories, and other resources. So within this chapter, you could find reference to specialized search engines. You can look at some of the directories that are more popular, or directories that you can readily go to. Some of the information is free. Part of it may require some for you to subscribe, but I'm not sure. But bottom line is that these are all arranged properly and documented, so that you don't have to worry about, like, for example, data scraping tools. What data scraping tool does is that it allows you to give it some sort of parameters while you're online opening this as an interface. And let me just click on it to show you where it's at. Data scraping tool. So when you open one of these links, you will find that it has the ability for you to define what type of information you're looking for. For instance, keywords like contact, keywords like executives. All you have to do is just plug in all the essential wordings for which the software is going to go out there and do its own collection of that information from different websites and bring it to you in the shape of a data table. And that data table would keep growing as you make it run for number of hours. So it basically is doing automated collection of those specific information types. So I'm just giving you an idea right now, not that it's part of the it's a part of the course to tell you how to use those softwares, but you should know where these lists are. For instance, news verification tools. Okay, this is another one. So if you click on it, you can look for all the references that we could find for all of our students to know that we do our own due diligence in-house, so that we not only keep up to date on certain essential references, and the ones that you're looking at right now are updated constantly. So you would probably find some of the tools that are listed here to be very useful. Fact checking and verification tools is another example. So if you click on any of these, you will find the links where you could just click on it and it'll take you to those verification sites. All right, so right now we're more focused on figuring out if you are prepared to start your online research business. You can't just because you know how to Google and search few things, you can't put yourself out there in the market to just start offering services unless you're organized enough and you have pooled all your resources and you are prepared enough that you know what your limitations are. At the same time, you can also look for opportunity based on what you are able to what you have collected as your resources. So continuing with the same slide, then we've got how to collect, tabulate, organize, analyze, and present information. This obviously is an area that is part of standard research process or procedures that we've just been dealing with earlier with the past 2-3 classes we did. We were talking about traditional research methods. You should know how to do sampling. You should know how to separate quantifiable data with the qualitative data, and then to be able to analyze it with either softwares that are there, which requires for you to just plug in your collected information, including your numerical data or non-quantitative data, and it starts to build reports. It starts to give you some sort of analysis that is presentable in graphical shape or can be organized in tables, but that's all mechanically inclined. On the other hand, the knowledge that you require for organizing and analyzing information are the techniques of analytics. One of the techniques is statistical analysis, which is purely coming from the numerical data side. Talks about standard deviations and few other things. That part we are not going to cover today, but to give you an idea that analytics is actually dependent on your source of data, your type of data, how you organize it, and then to use your different type of analysis. So that's another knowledge set that you should have. How to write research reports is extremely important, and we will discuss some of the reports. In fact, we have a series of sample specimens that I'd like to certainly walk you through, so that you get an idea that writing a research report is not as if you're writing anything in a let's say it's not a essay writing, let's put it this way. It is very technical, and sometimes it is also organized in a way that is considered industry standards. What should be included in or the bare minimum of what should be the itemized things that should be part of your research report. So that is another thing that you have to be able to do. Ability to conduct online investigative research work. You never know, as part of your research, some part of it, or maybe major part of it, will be doing some background checks, finding association of entities with individuals or individuals with individuals, perhaps doing some background checks, assets discovery. Those are the area which I would generally call it a knowledge that is specific to online investigations. So if you want to get into that area, or that is the expertise that you want to acquire, and you want to package it as part of your services and offerings, then you should have some knowledge of how to do investigations and background checks. Familiarization of important cyber laws and ethical issues. So this is what we will be covering in module 4, and that is your CIRS Internet Law and Ethics. Internet law is absolutely most important for anyone getting into a research business, for you to understand what your liabilities or what your responsibilities are, what type of regulations or legal issues are going to protect you from exposure to any kind of risks, or your business risks have to be analyzed under the umbrella of what may be impacting your business as well as your personal assets. So that part is important, and that's we will obviously be covering. Sound knowledge of conventional research methods, that's what we did earlier. Knowledge of specialized online research and research tools. You have a directory of it, you've got a reference guide that's going to cover everything that you would need for finding the tools and specialized search engine. How to perform precision search and query operators, notation and symbols. So that part we covered with giving enough hands-on practice, as well as having the knowledge to create some complex searches. So that's where the preparedness gives you an overview of what is expected or what you should be looking at before you start. Now, with the client that you will be interacting with, or your potential client would have certain expectations for them to hire or select anyone to do research work for them. What are those expectations? So we'll just look at those in this slide. So what are my research outsourcing expectations? I'm going to take a 5 to 7 minutes break a little early, just have to make a quick phone call. And the next break we'll take is going to be another 5 minutes. So it'll still be under 10 to 15 minutes break time. Let me just take a little bit of a pause here. I'll just go and get some coffee and make a quick call. I'll be coming back in about 5 to 7 minutes. So you can keep looking at, or you can view this slide. It's open already. You can read through all that is said and written here in bullet points, all of it. And if you have questions, you can ask me later. But at the same time, just so you know, we'll be discussing all of these points. It's not like we're leaving out any of them. If you have special interest in asking questions from any of these, you're most welcome to do that. I'll see you in about 5 to 7 minutes. Obviously, the client is interested in knowing if you have subject expertise, if you have some background from the industry or professional background that convinces your client that you understand the industry, you understand the issues, and so on. So subject knowledge. What are the previous work references? Of course, this is a pressing question from someone who's just getting into the industry. So I get a lot of questions from students on this. I guess one of the things about references is, first of all, if you have a industry background, you work in specific industry, then that should be sufficient to give some reassurance to the client. But if not, then you can start by taking small contracts of work as an outsourced resource with another research company that already has some clients. And believe me, a lot of times, because research sometimes is seasonal, or it has a cycle that has spikes. It goes up with the amount of work, with the length of the contract. So they need to hire people, and they're looking for someone who has research abilities, and therefore they would be a good reference to give if you've worked with them to begin with. Or you can take up some of the assignments, or not worrying too much about the pricing, basically offering something as volunteers, or there are virtual platforms which offer, or which are more like platform that places some sort of research projects, and you can bid on those and take those as well. Can we trust giving business information? Now, this is, I think, one of the more important considerations from the client, because they are willing to share information with you for some of it might be their own internal data that they're willing to share. Others could be worrying about whether they should trust you enough that with the research you're doing for them, you're not going to go to their competitors, or you're not going to reuse the same research for which they're paying for, and then rebrand it and then resell it somewhere else. So there is this issue of trust. But you can always sign up an NDA, non-disclosure, non-compete, or anything that legally gives some assurance. But again, the assurance is inversely dependent on the structure of your business. If as an individual you are registered, or you have registered your business as a sole proprietorship, then they might have a little bit of reluctance. If your structure is such that you have few partners, they would get the assurance that it is an ongoing business, or it's not just dependent on one individual. Something happens, their project might be in jeopardy. So that is another consideration. And there could be more. So I guess trust is one of the key issues here. Can we count on data information reliability gathered for research? So a lot of times there are marketing companies that do online research and collect data from different surveys and polls, and they also have resources that may be inexpensive, not as reliable for collection of that information. So that could be something that would want the client to first of all to see your sources and get some assurance that you have done enough due diligence and done some checks, that that they can get the quality data or quality information. So what is the business background, size, expertise, client base? So they're going to look at your your background as a something that you have to place in your offers for research work. And one of the typically all offers require for you to put some background information in writing to give an understanding to the client where you're coming from, or what your background, professional as well as or being in the business, for how long have you been there. So your expertise would also be determined by the team that you have. So everything that the client wants may not be available in one place, because all researches are not alike, and even same research which would be labeled under, let's say, market research, maybe typically two market research are never the same. There is always, I haven't seen any research work that is a duplicate of what you've done earlier. There's always some difference in what the objective of the research is, and based on how you're going to pitch your offer to the client, they would be able to understand from your way of how you've expressed it or given a background information, they would know where you're coming from. So you have to be really good at presenting yourself. What are the business memberships with trade organizations? So your affiliation with professional organizations generally is giving some idea to the client that you are up to date with the information. You are associated with an organization that has some regulatory requirements, or in case things don't work out or you don't produce as required, they may be able to get maybe able let's put they can complain to any professional body that you are affiliated with. So they get sort of an assurance that you have those connections and you are a member of some of those associations and organizations, professional organizations, who are business partners, collaborators, affiliates. A lot of times you have to mention if you are affiliated with other research companies, or you have performed research as an affiliate, or someone that has partnered even with software companies that use specialized research softwares for analytics, for example. You may want to mention them and give the idea that you actually are familiar with some of the big name softwares, you've used it, you have hands-on skills to be able to select those. And therefore any affiliations with the software companies or research companies would be good to mention with logos and everything. What is the business digital footprint like? Meaning that if you are you've got a social media presence, or you have a business that is advertised somewhere, or has reviews or anything that is allowing outsiders or third parties to interact with, and to have some sort of or you're participating in a forum, or you're mentioned in a forum, or you have the accounts in social media that are active, like you've got enough followers, you've got enough members, or you have that spread of interacting with your with the mainly with the social media accounts. So that's what it means by digital footprints. Unless you're also participating by writing articles or contributing to some magazines or some of the organization's own I guess what do you call it, you are actually giving your opinions, and you're interacting with the organization's platform somewhere. So there is a mention of you being out there, where your business and yourself is showing that you have that you have gathered those dynamics for the social interaction on the internet. Your business website, it has to look, it should have a corporate look. Are there any third-party opinions, polls, reputation? So there are people who are looking to get some sort of a clue on whether or not someone has complained about you, or there are these ratings which is mentioned, especially these days. If you open up Google, you'll see that when the snippets get returned, you see the 5 stars, and those are probably coming from some reviews. We don't know the origin of that, but Google has the ability to gather that information, and therefore there could be a reputation situation. And reputation management is another area where you find that some of the clients or your or anyone has given their opinion which is negative. It needs to be tackled, it needs to be taken care of, or it needs to be answered, at least to where you would be giving some answers, not leaving it out there in the internet world to view it as a complaint of some sort. So even if it's a complaint, I'd advise that you should put some response to explain your side. Are there any court cases or ongoing litigation? So if it is a business which requires for the client to verify their own risk in engaging with you, they may want to look at any court cases that's pending, especially in your country. Let's say if it's in US courts, they might want to do some due diligence and find out if you have any legal issues pending in court of law, or any decisions against you are showing, because that is probably a public information also in US, but in Canada you can always look at in the as a public search for any kind of litigation that's going against you. How do I get an online research work? Establish a niche area, layout, online presence, build comprehensive business plan. We don't teach how to do business plans, but this is obviously when you're starting, you want to make sure from the cash flow side that you're able to sustain until sustain financially, that is, until you are able to get enough momentum from gathering clients that are generating revenue to overcome your costs. And therefore it is one of the essentials in business, your marketing strategy, your strategy on projecting some figures for making it viable, or for ensuring that it could remain to be an ongoing business. You need to do those math and do your work with the projections. Obtain certification, register with professional organizations, familiarize typical outsource data scraping. So if you're doing your research as a generalist, then the type of work that really, and to a certain extent, it requires a little bit of an expertise. Like even if you're doing data scraping, you're doing lead generation, online data collection, helping some recruitment companies to find resumes online. If you also want to offer services like attaching yourself with an organization which is which has a product that they are launching or something to do with e-commerce, they would certainly would want opinions like reviews to be vetted. And so these are some niche areas, but they come under the umbrella of niche services, or it is a kind of a niche work, but generally a generalist is able to do it. So for anyone who is looking to get involved in giving out opinions, polls and surveys are a specialized field. So I don't know if to bring it under the generalist criteria or to make it a specialized work. But if it is specialized, then there are survey companies, but their service packaging is very different. First of all, not anyone is going to give you the surveys as a research project. They do require some sort of reassurance, and they have to have that trust level, because surveys, people can actually be cheating in offering those services out there when those surveys in fact are not returned by real people, and therefore they can actually be, it's a matter of trust. It's one of those things. So I'm sorry, let me just get this thing turned off. There, forgot to turn it off. Now it's turned off. Okay, then place services with job sites and virtual assistants, online database. So this is just telling you how to get your research work as a virtual assistant. Unless there is anything specific that I want to mention, I would just leave it for you to read through all of these as bullet points rather than elaborate on them, because they're self-explanatory. Consider contracting and subcontracting with established research business. As I said, to get some sort of reference or experience may be a good idea. And we have clients that offer research work to us on regular basis, but they don't have a consistent project that is long term. It's just based on spikes of how the workload is increasing for them, and then they want to quickly find that resource, and they want to tap into their associates and affiliates to see if they can induct those on temporary basis to be able to do those research work. So as an independent researcher, you do get work from people who require a third eye or someone outside of someone's business management site to check into or give an opinion as a third person, or as as a consultant that is not associated with the management. People like shareholders, bankers, insurance companies, all of them would like to engage outside consultant to do some research on the management or the operations of organizations. So that's where the independent consultant really has a good chance of getting those as business opportunities. And this one, purpose of any professional research, it's just itemized. It's telling you what is the what the professional research is supposed to be doing, or researcher has to deliver. Generally, it's existing knowledge that is there already, but you would be expected to build an additional knowledge on top of it, just to give it a new shape or perhaps improve on the existing knowledge. Then to construct or create new procedures, process, method, or systems, develop investigations, derive inferences, put forth solutions. Now, deriving inferences and making deductions generally is left for the client, but there could be some professionals, independent consultants, whose opinions matter, and therefore they can be asked to do this part. So, you should know how to write your research report by delivering, based on what you researched and what you found. You may be able to give some opinion. Put forth solutions to the problems, to collect and convert it into meaningful analysis and reports. So you have to know, analysis of how the data should be presented and organized, explore and analyze general issues surrounding a problem, explain new phenomena. Now, explain new phenomena is really too loose of a term, generally referring to anything that is discovered as a new piece of information, or to be researched as a competitive, as part of the competitive intelligence, to see what the competition is doing. Skills requirement, there is soft skills and there is hard skills. It's a general knowledge, nothing very specific, except that soft skills are more derived from your behavior, from your attitude, from your ability to communicate, and so on and so forth. So it is more individualized, and that's why it's called soft skills. Hard skills is purely technical. So if you are coming from data analytics, for example, you should know what analytics is, what are different methods of collecting, computer skills, and so on. So this is just for you to get, be able to answer the questions in your CIRS exams. That's why they're there, nothing very complex. And as I mentioned, they're in the slides only because they are coming in the exams as questions. One statement that is important for you to actually be considerate about, and consider it as something that will come to you as an opportunity only if you understand that certain organizations are always looking for outside researchers to help them find some information which otherwise for their in-house staff might be difficult or time consuming, or they may not have the expertise to collect that information. And for whatever the requirement might be, it depends on how you're going to match your ability or your professional background or your skills in finding specific type of information with the operational needs of the organization that you want to find that opportunity in. And therefore there has to be a connect. For instance, there are certain departments like market and research department, or just marketing department. They have specific needs to find some information gathered from their competitors or from the industry itself. And that's why they might require that information to do analytics or analysis. But then in the same way, there could be another department, which is a product manufacturing department. They may be interested in finding competitive intelligence for product feature sets, that is comparable products, but they might want some research or extra legwork for someone to gather that for them. So those opportunities are available, but only if there is a connect between the department which is looking for a help from outside consultants, and where you would be able to offer it to them as as an additional help that they can outsource and therefore that would require for you to have an understanding, first of all, of the kind of research that they are looking for generally, and understanding that there are certain research reports or certain reports that they need the outside information to connect with what they have generated internally from their own departments, and within those specific departments and what you collect, so that they can create certain reports. So there are managerial reports. Managerial reports can be, different types. To get an understanding of what those report types are, would give you an idea that a typical organization, which could be a medium sized to a large sized business, may have a requirement for outside help to gather that specific type of research under those headings or specific headings of those research reports. So I'm just going to take you to those research reports directly. For instance, these are business management reports. In this one, you could see that we have placed the type of reports under the main headings. Like, for example, here, the marketing and sales department, they require research reports that are named here. They're given a name. These names are important for you to learn when you need to go to find details on what these reports require. You would also be able to connect with the missing information, or the type of information that you would be able to gather for those departments under these report headings. So campaign effectiveness is a specific report which has to do with marketing and sales. So to type it in Google and then find out what it entails, or what are the itemized figures and facts that needs to be collected, you could get a better idea of what you can deliver. So you can actually put it in your proposal if you're offering that service, or build your services around what the requirements of certain information might be to pad up these reports, or to help them to make these reports. Campaign effectiveness is one, comparative analysis is another one, brand research is another one. So all of these SWOT analysis, SWOT, which means strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis report. So you might be looking for collecting information from the competitors, look at future projection of what is coming that could be a threat to their production or their product. Consumer insights, this would probably require for you to gather some information on through the social media, or through reviews, or what people are talking about. If it's a brand new launch or something that is to be launched in future, you may want to get a consumer insight as well. When I say you, it means you as a researcher who is an outsider that is looking for opportunities within organizations for helping them in building internal reports according to what is mentioned or what is named. So consumer insight, consumer satisfaction research, and so it continues. The reason why this is mentioned in the chart is for you to discover and for you to understand that even the organizations have a need for researchers that are coming from outside the company and may not be employed full-time, but may assist the full-time employees within typical organizations and businesses. Now here is another heading which says company research reports. So company research reports may be equity valuation reports. These reports are required by shareholders or by the owners or investors. For equity valuation, perhaps you need to have some financial background, or could be, a CPA, for instance, or and the reason for it to be outsourced, and mainly it is outsourced because they don't, or the investors and the interested parties are not interested in getting valuation done from the management or from the operational side of how the business management is putting the numbers. and therefore they want some outsider to verify that and basically look at the dynamics and risks and everything else. So that might be outsourced. Share valuation is another one. Company assets valuation could be, so there are all these mentioned under the major headings, and which is what is actually in the larger fonts. And that's why we have organized the different types of reports under the headings. Technical reports, financial reports, business intelligence reports, all these are collected. I don't know if I'm correct, but I thought maybe Dominic, you are working somewhere in the area of business intelligence, and I believe you are doing some collection of information. And you mentioned it earlier when we started the course. Uh, do you relate to any of these business intelligence reports, which are key performance management spreadsheet, and these are some of them. Do you know if you do you have the mic? Is this open for you, Dominic?
Yes. So I deal with more the data visualization, and I assist my manager with the KPIs. But yeah, I am familiar with some of these. Some of these are very high level management. But yeah, I definitely am familiar with some of these.
So you see, if you have to start assuming that you want to go independent and start your own consulting, and perhaps based on what you have learned from your job related work, would you be able to offer it as a service or package any of these services which require outsiders or someone outside of the organization to collect this for them and then charge them as a consulting fee?
Yes. I mean, also too, a lot of this information, and like you said, individual companies will pay you to come in. Because there is, for example, the technical background report. We have a company that we pay to do that for us. And it's basically like a few guys. It's a private company. It's a few guys and a lady, and they come in and they handle that part. So yeah, you can definitely take some of these skills and maximize them to start your own business and make some money. Yeah, definitely.
So that's good information for anyone who's getting into the business of doing independent research, to have an understanding, first of all, of what are the different research reports that may require outside help, so that it can be a service package that you can offer, right? So that's why we have mentioned it. And this is some of these reports, and there could be many more. But it's not like something that we would want to talk about as individual reports, because there are far too many. And I guess the idea is for the opportunity for independent business research to look for in the organization. So this is the idea behind this. So you get this, hey? It's okay. Now, so, and here is a list of research report used in businesses. One of the hot areas, or the place where a generalist might be able to assist, is shown in social media, where you could do some analysis by collecting information using your search queries, some of the specialized searches that you can get information from social media accounts to see what people are talking about. You can get that expertise by understanding the different platforms of social media, mainly the popular ones. So this one, social media presence, include your expertise in finding out what the brand loyalties might be like. You can create surveys, you can look at what people are talking about with let's say just in Apple computer, that's too big, but just to give you an idea, like brand loyalties, obviously Apple versus, the Android, or could be phone social trends. You can look at the social murmurs, look at discussions, see what people are talking about, opinions, ratings, etc. So these are just opportunities, and these bullet points are naming some of these both as reports, or you can just treat them as opportunities to search for further, typing these wordings within the Google search, and then looking at some of the samples to find out what reports include, and then to find a connect, as I say, so that you can synchronize your service offerings with what could be the potential opportunities within these. Now, another matter of utmost importance is, I guess, evaluating your own services cost, because every individual who is getting into a research business has their own. I mean, this is talking about your like how much of the pricing that you would be expecting, or what would be your hourly rate in the simplest terms that you'd like to offer for your services. And you must know that what the worth of someone with your background, your expertise, and whatever you have built as an asset or knowledge base that you have, how much is it worth to a consumer or your potential clients when it comes to your hourly rates. So these are just the bullet points that are telling you that all of these attributes, or these individualized sort of mentioned criterias, might add to your value as someone who has to give yourself a price in the market to be available to do these work. Your past experience, your affiliations with political appointments, your government engagements. So this is more descriptive, and I wouldn't want to discuss it much, except that you can read through it and get a sense of what could be, we're not talking about how to do your own costing. Costing is another part of your learning how to come up with the hourly rates. But these are just some of the things that you want to consider when you're going to give a value to your service. SWOT analysis, it's just an example. Your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We're not teaching SWOT analysis. We're just giving you an example to get an understanding of what SWOT analysis means. Strengths can be on one side, strength versus weaknesses. Weaknesses is your own weakness or your client's weakness. Strengths can be evaluated as assets or something for which you may acquire a goodwill. Opportunities is more futuristic. Threats, again futuristic. So existing strength and weaknesses versus upcoming opportunities and threats to mitigate or to reduce the risk exposure. So this is just analysis, as some of the companies might just want you to do your SWOT analysis. Okay. Factors to consider for research project price determination. Now, pricing is been it's a problem area for those who are just entering into the industry. It's very hard to compete in the market, because some of the research market is still a cottage industry for how the pricing is determined. If more of the research work is to be outsourced to small size companies, then obviously you're looking at cottage industry, and price can vary considerably. But if you're looking at a regular business or a business that is ongoing, some of your clients already exists, and therefore you do have a sense of what could be the what could be the best price, which is not too low and not too high. You are, sort of, putting yourself in a competitive market, yet you're not compromising the quality of work by throwing, um, very, very cheap prices at your client, because that may be counterproductive also. And not every business is looking for cheap options. They're looking for quality and performance, criteria. So anyway, let's just look at some of the factors that are to be considered, like type of client in business. Of course, it could be a service business which you are trying to pitch your, reputation, and or it could be, a product related, could be a small size or a big size business. The complexity of the project is more debatable, because unless you have some experience or a background in taking up research projects, you may not be able to pinpoint or put your finger on what could be the complexities, especially the eventualities of or the contingencies rather of what could be the risks, and what could be determined as a projected cost of delivering something, especially to collect the data. So the complexity of the project is an issue that definitely has a lot of dimensions, and it requires some sort of experience in the industry. The volume of data, because everything is hinged on the information collection, information being data or descriptive information or anything that is out there in the virtual world of internet. um, the collection of it could be one criteria or one of the difficulties, but volume is one of the major consideration, because it could be easy to get data, but the volume of data or the variables are so huge, and you might have to end up doing some sampling and that sort of thing, or data might be dynamic so that it is fluctuating quite a bit. That could be an issue. The quality of data or the source, the more the resource is organized data, or it is coming from credible source, it's going to be more expensive. So you've got a cost factor attached to it. So the volume is one, but the quality of data is another. Or, um, well, let's just, there is a formula of how to determine complexity of the project, and one of the variables or one of the ways in which you're going to determine complexity is the volume versus reliability versus resource cost. Then you've got the type of engagement, whether you feel that you may require some expertise down the line or in initial stages of your research work, because not everybody has all the expertise in-house. So you may end up hiring consultants or subcontracting some of your research work because of the nature of the problem, or if it requires expertise from subcontracting, you have to build that into your research price. Self-assessment of your hourly rate, there is a way to do that, and self-assessment basically is going to tell you what should be the cost of you running the business, as well as the cost of your individual time. So building, you need to figure out the overheads, which could be fixed or variable overheads, and then you have to add your own or your human resource cost to it. And for that reason, you probably want to begin with determining the minimum cost of running it, so that you don't run into price wars or price issues, where just because you have to compete with someone or somebody else is lowballing some of the offerings. you may be forced to go below a threshold level, which eventually would land you into trouble cost wise. So you should know what could be the minimum cost for you to actually not go below, even if there is a pressure from outside, from your competitors, with low pricing that they're offering. Check for the acceptable pricing method. So there is a pricing method which is industry-wide accepted as a method which your client is already aware of, or the client knows that these are the few methods that others in the research industry are adhering to, or it is acceptable enough that your client wouldn't think that you are bringing some sort of innovation in pricing formulas. So there are certain methods. There is methods like fixed pricing, project pricing, there is cost plus pricing, then there is few others. We'll be doing that too. Check for the, okay, so the next is the competition pricing and understanding the market pulse. So there could be seasonal issues with the market pulse, means that there could be a price fluctuation which would actually be a result of something or some event or something that might have an influence on how much you could charge. Some of these states may have a pricing that may differ from the same research company doing research in New York, because the cost of living and everything else. So there could be this factor as well. Most acceptable billing method. Billing method is slightly different from the pricing. Billing is how you're going to put, or you're going to present it according to the contract that you have signed for doing that research work. So there could be a billing method that requires for you to do a separate cost for out-of-pocket expenses or something which is ancillary to the main research work, or there could be everything put together for the reason of billing your client as a lump sum. So that is another factor that you'll have to be mindful of. So having that sense of understanding where you stand with the market, or you stand together with the market itself, would be a better idea. And you don't go in isolation and start creating your own rules all the time just because you're doing your independent consulting business. The market has dynamics of their own which needs to be understood. Relationship with the client's budget, size of the client's business. So these are price determination considerations. We can look at simplest way of sizing your research project. Your resource cost per hour times duration of project in hours of work. This is the simplest formula. We haven't introduced like 3 or 4 different formulas which are mathematically more complex, and sometimes it's hard for students to understand because they don't understand the business. Therefore, the easiest one that we are presenting is simply a cost per hour, which is cost and pricing are two different things. When we say cost simply means the cost to you, which means that it is not got a lot of profit built into it, but it may have a slightly or something overpriced, so that you have that buffer, but it is not the market price. So the cost is slightly different from the market price. Now, cost of per hour into duration of projects. By the way, if there are more than a few people involved, and you know that in your research work you may want to hire outside resource as well, talking about human resource purely, so the hourly rates may differ. Okay, so having a sense of projecting some of the eventualities of where your research might lead you to hire outside help, or anyone that has a pricing per hour which is different from what you are charging, you should be aware of that. The complexity, we have already dealt with it. See, from the earlier slide, the complexity is somewhat all these factors that are required for price determination. So it is kind of a repeat, but let's assume the complexity, how it is defined in the book. Um, Research scope and research problem. So research scope is most important because that's going to give you a perspective of whether or not it requires a broad research or it is going to be more refined or more targeted research, which means the subject of research is very well defined. It's elaborated enough that you would not have any problem in figuring out what your cost and what your cost might be. But if it is too broad in scope, it would create more complexity because a lot of questions may remain unanswered. More than well, mostly the client in the first go, when they're sending out a request for quotes, they don't expose themselves entirely with giving out a more detailed scope. They just want to get a feeler or get some sort of feedback on the pricing side to get their bearings on how much of generally how much the project would cost, or for the research, or for determining research outsourcing cost. But if they don't bring that information or enough information, and you just have very few things to work with and your scope is too broad, it's going to create complexity. The research problem generally is mentioned as a set of issues which may have different dimensions of where those problems can be solved by figuring out or working out a research plan. So if your research problem is such that it is it cannot be duplicate, or it is not solved by the industry itself, or where you don't have a lot of information because it is a new set of problem. Usually problem means that it is something which is very peculiar, which is very specific, tied to the client's core business, and they are usually not the same, or they don't have a solution. So that's why they call it a problem, and it is more intense work for the researcher. The length of, sometimes the client would also tell you with your research problem what they need resolved, or what should be the outcome of that, whether they're looking for solution or they're just looking for facts, whether they're looking for future projections, your opinions on where it's going to go, or it is a problem that requires a quick fix, or it is a short-term project. So everything is built into research problem. The length of the project, if it is short-term, as I mentioned, long-term or ongoing. All right. The factor that is going to add to your cost or add to your complexity is the time strain. And if it is an ongoing project, it probably means that it is going to evolve, or newer set of issues will crop up, or you would have to redo the scope of research. So if the ongoing is sometimes tied to a type of price fixing or a contract that we call cost plus contract. Cost plus means that you're telling your client that because it's ongoing and it is going to change directions, or will find something new, or new facts would lead you to another sort of in a certain direction of where you had planned initially. So because of that unknown and sometimes a time factor also being a problem, you would have to advise your client to go for cost plus. They're going to pay you for the minimum cost or minimum charges that you would charge on hourly basis, as an example, and then you're going to bill them with 20% on top of that, just so that you have something with the client that gives you the assurance that without having a fixed knowledge of what is to be expected and what the outcome, you would still be able to make that 20% on top. The volume of data involves list raw data. Now, with the volume of data, another factor is the nature of data. If it is raw, unstructured, raw unstructured means that it may not be as related, or it may not have been organized properly. It is not put in the right slot or in the right columns. for as in the Excel sheet, except that it is so dispersed, or the nature of data is such that it is a qualitative data, which may have a lot of volume, and therefore it may require for you to do that extra bit of work to organize it in the first place, or to come up with a strategy to do your data management planning, which is more tied to unstructured data. Structured data is usually pre-formulated, it has been organized, it has been put under the correct headings and right columns, and therefore easier to work with. A data source, if it is primary and secondary, primary is a lot of legwork, a lot of extra bit of effort, a lot of you have to be more careful with the collection of primary. But most importantly, the primary data is very difficult to get, so therefore it has a higher value attached to it. A lot more cost is involved. Secondary data can be found in different forms and shapes, including books, magazines, some of the research reports and so on. So that is another factor. So complexity will start to shape up and will start to give way to how you're going to determine your pricing and give a quotation to your client. Quality of data, the data collection methods involves, so what the collection method is. Focus groups, virtual focus groups can be expensive, but not as expensive as social experiments, not as expensive as ethnographies. There is surveys, that is what we call longitudinal surveys, which is going to ask you to, no, it's called cross-sectional surveys. Longitudinal is just standard surveys, but cross-sectional is when you have to actually reshape or redo, or to change the pitch of your questions in the surveys based on how the position changes, or how deep you want to get to the getting the answers. So that would be something that will add to a cost of your quoting for your research work. The levels of expertise and collaboration, of course, more expertise that you require, that you have to induct in, you have to hire temporary basis. You don't have in-house, you have to do subcontracting, you do collaborations and so on. The agreed research methods and methodologies. So if the client is very specific on getting research done in a certain way, with the type of research reporting that they want, the type of data they want, the shape and form in which they want that report to be, having all those analysis done, and so it continues. So research methods and methodologies is overall giving you, or being very specific on what the client is looking for. This part is mentioned quite a bit, or all of these aspects of designing or looking at the complexities is mentioned in the specimen research requisitions, as well as the response to requisitions, which is a specimen document that I'll share with you. So all of these were to be showing in there somewhere in the paras or in the bullet points when you look at them, and I will share that with you as well. Some of the slides I don't necessarily think that you require, or for me to go through, like marketing strategies. Ask the following questions. Anything that says ask the following question, for me it is nothing to explain, except that I leave it to you to tell me if any one of these you do not understand. But asking a question is not a statement, it's rather prompting you to consider, or to think of as the area that needs to be covered. So if you start to read it, you could see what is your go-to market strategy. Now this is marketing strategies. We are not teaching this course for you to learn what the marketing strategies are. The idea here is to give you a set of questions, not that this is going to be part of your exam. This is for your knowledge, to get an understanding of what could be some of the things that you want to consider when you start your business. And we have dealt with these quite a bit. Your marketing communication plan, we're not again designing marketing planning, so I'll leave it for you to read through. Unless you have a question, I'll just move forward. Okay, so these are opportunities more than anything else, and because we are on the same topic, I'd like to start with sharing the market research report. We'll get to these slides in our next lecture. Now I have to open up the book, and I want to show you the specimen research reports. Breakout affair. Okay, there we go. Now in the module 3, which is actually showing in the book with these green color tabs. So whenever you see on the pages that starts with this green background, it means you're on the module 3 of your course. Sorry. Hold on, let me do 2 pagers and see. What's happening because of this. Let's look at this chart here. It's also in your slide. This is showing you a workflow or a process of how the documents are exchanged between the client and yourself as researcher offering your services. So what happens is one of the documents that initiates or initializes any sort of research outsourcing assignment from the client is called research request or request for proposal, which means the client is going to send these out to not just you but to others, other researchers as well, to ask them to respond by giving an estimate in terms of time and money as as a proposal from their side. So the request needs to be made first. The request goes to the clients or to the researchers, and there is a format, or you could say that there is an outline of how the proposal generally comes when you are dealing with some professionals or people who are outsourcing these research work. So it has that that layout. So we'll look at that. Then we'll look at how the response to that proposal or request for proposal, how that response gets prepared from your side as a researcher, and what are some of the important elements that needs to be mentioned or become part of your response. And then we look at research service contract. Okay, and finally we're going to look at the billing, how the billing is done. That way we'll also discuss what are the different pricing methods as well as some of the costing methods. So between step 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'll be actually we will be getting the more knowledge of how the actual work papers are exchanged. And because they have a certain format, so I would want you to pay close attention to how they're set, and also to see from whatever we have discussed thus far with traditional research methods, you would realize that it is going to mention quantitative terms like quantitative, qualitative. It will also mention some of the research reports that are required, some of the sampling methods, some of the methodologies, all will be mentioned here. This is more comprehensive in the sense that instead of reading through each paragraphs and some of the details under the different headings of what we had discussed, you can, just by following how the reports or how the paperwork is done, you would be able to connect with that, and you don't have to read through everything in detail. So that's why I just want to hop onto this one as part of information that would would work more concisely and would give you and by the way, these specimens are coming from real research, so they're not samples in the sense how you treat sample documents or templates. This is coming from our own internal working with the clients, with the real clients, and you were free to use these as a reference to create or to build your own paper trails or documents between yourself and the client. We don't have a problem with that. Even with the legal contract, you can use it. You have every permission to do that. So let's look at RFP and go through these documents. Start with request for proposal, then we look at response for RFP. Okay. So most important research objective there, it seems that they're looking to bring some new product to the market. They want to evaluate its economic viability based on consumer needs and the price they're willing to pay. So the research objective obviously is directing you towards market research on a product launch, and also to determine the cost and viability based on the product's need, consumers' demand. If there is a gap in the market for this type of product, you're going to look at the viability of that product and look at the feature sets and so on. So it's going to be, it is more precisely explained here, but the scope is where you want to put your finger on to figure out exactly how much of your resources are involved and what should be the cost that you would be looking at to get this project done. Collect business intelligence for product research. This is a broad term. Business intelligence can be multidimensional, but it seems that because it is a launch of a product, it could be a product analysis as well as feature set analysis, cost and price analysis, a bill of material analysis. It could be 10 different things. Best price determination, it's obviously tied up to the business intelligence. Evaluate product competition and its business market outlook. So who you're competing with which specific product you are competing with. So you need more information. This is all I'm trying to establish here. With the scope that is mentioned, you get a surface level idea, or at least get about enough to have some sense of what type of research is required. The client will rely on data collection and data analysis as in quantitative research, as well as qualitative analysis of social media trends and behaviors in the purchase of similar or comparable products. Wow, long sentence. In current online markets. So it is detailed to the extent where you can actually start to hash out what could be involved. It could be social media research as well. You are looking at the consumer market by tapping into social media platforms. The research will also determine utilization by a particular consumer group and answer the questions such as what value the product brings to the consumer. So obviously, when you're talking about product viability, cost versus feature sets versus type of product and type of consumers, you will have to build all of that into your research as the information that needs to be processed and organized. And they're saying the selected firm will be responsible for the development and implementation of a comprehensive and cost-effective market research plan. So there you see in the scope that they're talking about something which we like to call market research plan. It's not a market research report, but a plan. So literally, it would require enough due diligence that the plan for the launch of that product can be established through the information that you would be putting together for your client. Tasks will include but not be limited to the following criteria. So when the client, and you have to read between the lines, when it says may not be limited to the following criteria, that means it could be ongoing or it can take a new shape as you progressively start to compile your research information. Perform SWOT analysis. This now is giving a slightly more precision to exactly what type of or the minimum research reports that the client is expecting out of you. It is asking you to do SWOT analysis, product of creative material, including online services, consumer data collection, collecting competitors' business intelligence data. Now, when you are looking at some of the data resources or information resources, which may be very difficult to get to, because when someone mentions competitors' business intelligence data, it also means information that could be internal. On the other side, from their competitors to obtain, and therefore may not be all that easy to get to. So you would, when you're designing your response, you may want more clarification, and also you have to educate the client at the same time, because expectations from the client side is mentioned as as a more elaborate or more more demanding from the client side. The type of intelligence which may actually not be easy. So you have to educate your client so they get a better understanding of or they may want to reduce the scope or take out some of these elements from their scope. Perform qualitative and quantitative analysis. So you have to be specific. You have to tell them, or you have to show them that the qualitative aspect of it may require certain methods that may have some shortcomings, advantages, disadvantages, and some inherent limitations that needs to be understood by both parties. And then you've got quantitative analysis that they require to build charts, data tables, etc. So there would be quite a bit of data that needs to be organized. Build market research plan. I mean, we as researchers can help in building market research plan. We don't really build it as if we are creating a market research plan for them directly, because market research plan, or the term that they're using, they may not be well informed, may not understand some of the deeper layers of what is involved in doing research plan, because you have the financial projections there, you have the marketing strategy there. So market research plan may be understood, or may be considered by you as someone who understands the deeper layers, and the client may not have that knowledge or enough knowledge. So you have to ask them to actually either rephrase it or get an informed knowledge about what you can and cannot deliver. Perform other communications and marketing related assistance as required. So you have to be very clear that you are an outside contractor and your obligations are not the same as that of employees that they have. So that criteria has to be strictly followed, and therefore it needs to be rehashed, or this statement needs to be understood with clarity, that you're not at their disposal with their own timelines and so on and so forth. So nothing that would make you appear or for them to consider you as an extension of their internal employees. Then they may emphasize a few things. Note that whenever they put note that or disclaimer or what seems like legal statements, you may want to discuss it with your attorneys, or you have to look at it from the contractual perspective to see whether you can build it into a legal contract or not, because sometimes these special notes or disclaimers or specifications of what you as a researcher may or may not be able to do may be illegal, or may not be legally executable under the contractual laws or contract laws. In your response to the RFP, clearly state your research strategy, methods and methodologies you intend to apply, mention committed milestones, deliverables, estimations, so on and so forth. Acceptance of proposal will occur only when contract is executed. So, some of the researchers would ask for the clients to pay them for designing something as elaborate as the different methods you're applying, or giving them more details of how the research is to be conducted, and therefore it becomes more consultative and more of an information which has a value that may require or for client to pay for. Proposal bids from international contractors may be considered. So all of these are there, but not for us to discuss as the important areas. More important, we go back to the research proposal, which is when you are responding to that RFP. You will give a background of your business, just to make a statement that you're capable and they can rely on your expertise, or whatever you want to put in the background. Research problem, you have to reiterate, or you have to rewrite it so that it is more of a situation where you want to shorten the gap between how the client is expressing what they require versus how you would interpret it and place it to the best of your ability, to be conforming with the scope that is mentioned initially by the client. So you have to really write it so that it doesn't look like a question, but rather as an elaboration of what they're looking for, but in a more detailed format. So there is a connect between professional way of expressing it versus someone from the client side who is not a researcher may not have put it exactly that in that technical language. You've got research of, so let's just go to directly to these itemized headings. So you're going to write with the objective of your research, and you're going to make it look like as if you are you're expressing how you understood it from the initial proposal request. So the client is interested in investing its resources for launching new product, presumably for men, that contributes to concealing and covering. This is when you were able to get some extra bit of information even before you prepared this proposal. So you must have made some calls or had some correspondence with them to get a better understanding of the product they're referring to. So it is a new product for men that contributes to concealing and covering men's baldness by applying an organic hair fiber solution, whatever bottle container. So here you are talking about a problem. You are telling them that they are, you know, being very specific about one product, and that product is named in your proposal, and therefore you are more focused and you want to be in sync with exactly what product they're talking about. Then research objective can be written or rewritten so that it is giving a better picture of your understanding of what they actually mean by or what they're requesting. So the client is online retailer of innovative electronic products for men between the ages blah blah blah, whatever that goes by the brand name product X. In this regard, the client wants to outsource a comprehensive online research, online market research that covers all of this research, new products viability, optimizing process, optimizing pricing, and validates target consumer market. So what you have done is that you have mentioned, you have mentioned, in more detail the objective of the research by specifying exactly what. So in a way, you're not really asking them any question, but rather, you're trying to get an assurance from the client that you both are on the same wavelength as far as understanding the main objective and the nature of the problem. Then you are going down to get more details. See, it'll start to open up more and more, and you would see how it is written, and it is opening up with some of the ways in which you are going to approach this research. You are going to look at product viability, optimizing prices or optimize prices, validate target consumers, and then research scope is mentioned, perhaps using similar language as mentioned in the scope that is given to you. Might be the best way, because you don't want to contradict or to express something which may deviate from their initial request, or to use a very technical language so that it should create it should not create a problem between you and the client understanding of how they have written it. And as much as you can, you want to accommodate using less technical and just adopting their own language. So research scope, it says collect business intelligence for product. This is exactly the same, and you understand it in the same sense of what is meant or what is the intended scope, except that you don't want to make it more complex. So you used the same thing, collect business intelligence, best price determination, everything is the same. But as you keep going down, you would see that a more detailed account of research just keeps jumping. Research methods of how you're going to shape or move with or plan your research. You are going to mention research methods, what you're going to apply. So objective is mentioned. Currently, we are dealing with 5 key areas in quantitative and qualitative research assigned per scope of work. So what you've done is you've made it really easy for them to understand in plain English rather than use complex terms. And one of the ways of how you're going to express the approach to quantitative and qualitative data collection as well as research process, you have expressed it as awareness, for instance, as the keyword, and you let the market know that the product exists. So that is awareness. Targeting, reach the target segment with the highest online sales potential. Price determination, optimized price offer that will close the sale. So, you're going to make it easy for them to digest and for them to understand in best way for the parties to not have any confusion. You've got market analysis, identify business, product marketability, perform product analysis. Now, this is still broad. You're going to go more details, more granular with your quantitative approach or quantitative data research methods. You're going to first start with approach to research for data collection, and supposing it is primary data sourcing that you are after, then you're going to mention that how you're going to collect your primary data. You're going to do surveys, you're going to do transaction logs, you're going to do comparative business intelligence data collection. So you have mentioned bit in, under the data collection method for sourcing the primary data, by actually wording, using exact wording of what type of collection methods you're using. And for secondary data, you're going to look at research reports, data subscription, because the cost of acquiring data is the most expensive part, besides just the labor cost. And that is probably the second most value to the client, after getting the charts and the graphs and all that. So data collection method has to be very clearly defined so the client would agree to it and would not have an understanding interpreting as how you've written it. So research reports, what would be review blogs, articles, social forums, and third-party market research reports and industry research. So you'll have to spend money in collecting that, and therefore it is to be put under easy to understand heading of a process called data collection. And between that, you would need to differentiate the methods for collecting primary and secondary data. Perform quantitative analysis. You would do survey research, descriptive research, correlational research. These are all different types of, these are names of processes which are not as complex, except that all of these processes of quantitative analysis are interconnected. So the data itself is pretty much the same. It's just a chemistry formula where you're going to, name, for instance, descriptive research, and you would still be using the same data, but just manipulating that or making correlational analysis in different ways. So one variable to another versus another one to another set of table. So the ingredients are the same, but the chemistry or the formula of connecting with them is different, and that's why it's named differently. So there is descriptive, correlational research, casual. You're not expected to learn all of these, or these are not part of your course, but it is part of the format in which we do deliver our response to the client. So if you want, you can dig in deep and figure it out. With the scope that we are confined to, we can just mention it and show you as a reference or as an example. Then we've got qualitative methods, and you're going to explain that it's going to be online qualitative surveys and so on. Perform qualitative, what should be the different qualitative analysis, data visualization, sentiment analysis, qualitative comparative. Again, not for you to understand each one of these, but to have enough knowledge to know that with these type of analysis, you can actually put it as a response that makes you look as if you are the right professional to hand out that research work. At least you are using the terminology which defines you or differentiates you from a non-professional researcher to someone who understands the research work itself. And analysis is one of them. You're going to mention your team, because client at times would be interested in knowing what type of resources or expertise you have in-house, what would be the quality of people or the professional background of people that will get involved in the research work. So mentioning all of these, their credentials, qualifications, and so on. So this is how you're going to respond. And of course, it's such a big course. Sometimes I wonder if we don't go as fast as I'm going right now, unfortunately, we may not be able to catch up. Okay, so bear with me. I'm just not going to take more than few minutes here, but it is always there for you to refer to if you open the book and get to this page numbers. You'd certainly be able to discover more. But from my side, all I can tell you is that timelines is one of the crucial parts of when you'd be able to deliver it, or the minimum time requirements for you to deliver it with the responsibility of making it on time for the client. You're going to design your timeline chart just the way that it's set here in the book. You could give it phases because everything has milestones. It has its own limitations, and it has its own frame of how much resources and time is involved. Only you would know best. So you're going to explain it by writing it as if you are giving it a timeline that is organized in terms of how many days it's going to take. So let's suppose you start with the planning stage, it's going to take 14 days. Data collection, it's going to take 14 days. Phase 3, research and analysis, 22 days. So while you're mentioning these days, you're also giving bullet points of what is to be expected, or what should be the bullet points of how, or what is it that you're going to perform as a function. And in the last column, you can give more of a detailed account, or give remarks, or add a note that sort of explains all these bullet points. So if finalize research contract, review scope with the client, you can see it's talking about here in this column with more details. You're going to draft a research plan to be approved by the client, methods and approach to research finalized, and research contract. You don't write very long sentences, or make it too complicated, just so that it is understood as a piece of work which is explained with more precision and in a more concise way. So this is how you're going to create your plan, and with the total number of days, you can just give them an estimated project completion of 60 days, 2 months. Okay. Cost of research, you certainly would be giving them a price quote. So this is where you're going to actually, or where the client is going to look at the bottom line of how much it's going to cost them. So consulting charges, level 1 expertise. Level 1 can be given to certain your human resource that is trained or has an expertise to do certain specific type of research part. You've given them an expert level, for instance. You're going to mention it here. So if it is expert level, it's going to cost 30,000. Level 2 staff that is going to work on the project will cost 49,000. Level 3 staff will cost 6,000, and so it adds up. And you could see that as we scroll down, you could see that there would be obviously some indirect labor cost. That could be an administrative staff, because client is very much interested in finding out how much of the non-operation, non-direct cost is involved in this project, or the client might offer you some of their staff to assist you, and therefore ask you to reduce some of the indirect labor cost. Indirect is the cost that is ancillary to main cost, which is for actual research versus doing photocopies, doing some printing and stationery and other labor work. So overheads, you have mentioned also. The reason why you're going to put overheads is because it is overhead that is 20% as a buffer, which in case of cost plus contracts or contracts for which you're not very sure of how much it's, because it's not a one cost or a one project price, but rather you want to give it a little bit more flexibility, and therefore you want to provision something as direct overheads that may or may not happen. So because it's an estimation, it is not a final negotiated price, and it gives a starting point to the client to look it up in more details to see where they can cut corners or ask you to reduce the cost. So you sort of inflate it at certain point and reduce it for certain areas of the cost, giving the client the idea of where they can actually negotiate for lesser cost or lesser price. So anyway, the project is going to cost $200,000. There's a disclaimer here. No, do not worry about it. It's not for you to consider. More important is the research contract. There is a market research contract, and as I mentioned to you, you can reuse it if you'd like. You can use it as a specimen. It is valid both in US and Canada, but I believe we are more inclined to give you the template from Canada based on Canadian contract laws. You can look at this agreement, and in no way will guarantee that it is going to be a legal documents that you can use without consulting your attorney. So it's just a reference. You're free to use any of these. I don't know. I mean, it's a long one, but it is good for you to read through. It's not going to be part of your exams, and because it's in specimen, it is to be a reference rather than something that you can simply just copy and paste. But you can do that if you want. Again, it's your discretion. So let's just conclude our lecture today. I've taken a lot more time than I'm supposed to. Any questions that I can answer for you for now? Del or Dominique? All right. All right. Good enough. Well, this is not finished yet. So we're going to continue with the module 3, the next class when we meet. So we'll continue on Monday from where we left, and it's going to be one more class, and I'm going to try my best to finish it on Monday. If not, then it would just fall on to the next class after. But we do have to cover some of the analytics part from our previous topic, and I'll do that when we meet not on Monday but on Wednesday next week. So I'll first finish up the business of research, and then I'll get to whatever is left out. Eventually we'll land into the internet law and ethics. That's also set to be covered by the end of coming week. So thank you very much, and I wish you a pleasant evening or the afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now. Thank you for coming.